Guys, we're going to talk about Dana White, Turki Al-Sheikh, Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez, Ryan Garcia, Canelo, and much, much more on this impromptu edition of War Week Boxing Chats.
Radvashan Holdings proudly presents War Week Radio Chats with ring announcer Joseph Herron.
Guys, welcome. Happy Thursday to all of you guys. March 13th. What an amazing day that the Lord gave us. And I will say this. I'm in an especially wonderful mood because I am currently walking in spirit and in love with our Lord and Savior, our Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ, God the Father, and the Holy Spirit. Thanks be to God. I tell you what, it's truly a day to rejoice. If you look outside, guys, the moon looks unusually big, and it's supposed to be a blood moon tonight at around 2 or 3 o'clock. And that is a sign from our Lord and Savior that He is in motion and great things are coming to your lives if you keep your eyes focused on our Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ. And I tell you what, guys, I'm here to talk about boxing especially, but I just had to share that with you guys. And if you haven't surrendered your life to Jesus yet, please do so at this time. Because it's time, guys, to give Him control of your life. Give Him control. Give Him the reins and admit that you can't do this by yourself. And great things will happen for you in your life. You'll find just a fulfilled sense of peace and love that is beyond our level of understanding, guys. And I tell you what, can you tell I've been praying, guys? Thanks be to God. I tell you what, I hope you guys are having an amazing evening just like I am. Because I tell you what, there's a lot to give thanks and praise for. And, you know, I'll say this, one of them's boxing. It's become I will grumble a lot, guys, about our beloved boxing business. Because I'm in this business and I see what's behind the curtain. And I see the growing pains right now in the American market. The UK is on fire right now. They are just fine with Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn doing an outstanding job in collaborative effort with Turki Al-Sheikh and Riyadh season. They are at the top of their game right now. But the American market still leaves a lot to be desired. And we'll talk all about that this evening, guys. But let's start off right after I just gave thanks and praise. Let's start off with this.
Terrible fan takes on Twitter/X.
Ha ha! The greatest Kenyan accent you'll ever hear. Thanks be to God. Let's see. Yeah, I guess you can see that, guys, now. I want to play this. Let me scroll up a little bit so you guys actually see all of this. Well, you see enough. Now, I know that this isn't a terrible fan take, but might as well be. He sounds just as ignorant as certain fans who support Bill and Devin Haney. And anyway, we'll talk all about it, guys. But here, check this out. This happened during the, I guess, interview. I guess it was Monday, the press conference for Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, and Teofimo Lopez and their respective opposition for the fight card for May 2nd in Times Square, New York City. So watch this, guys. Tell me what you think.
And you're full of shit.
Me?
You're full of shit. And I hope that this is what you guys wanted to do. It's a fucking circus act. Devin is a real fighter, and you showed no respect up there. You showed no respect for what he's done for boxing. He's a 2-division champion and undisputed champion, and you're a piece of shit.
That's not kind of you to say.
Well, I mean, I'm just telling you the truth.
Why are the fans booing him then?
Well, I mean, that's because a part of it. We are in LA. This is a great boxing market, right? But it's made up predominantly of Hispanic fans that cheer for Ryan Garcia, and that's quite all right.
Well, it's okay. It's okay to be the bad guy.
But listen, and it's okay to be the bad guy, but it's not good for you to be the piece of shit that you are.
Well, explain what you mean by that.
Well,
what did I do specifically?
Well, you didn't describe him for who he was.
Michael Buffer introduced him.
No, but you on the stage, you painted Ryan Garcia as if he's won something. He's a PED drug cheat. You never said that. That's really.
I did. I asked your son specifically if the punishment fit the crime. I asked your son that specifically, and he said he was at peace at it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the punishment is one thing, but how you describe what that fighter is and what he is, you didn't do.
Okay, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. I have the most respect for your son. I think he's amazing at it.
I don't think that you do. I think that you are political, right? You did just what you wanted to do, and you got it off. I mean, and that's what this promotion has been about. But number 9.
But we're trying to sell a fight here. You know this, right?
Well, you sell it right.
All right, here's your chance to sell it
right. You sell it right. March 2nd, Devin will come in, and he's going to be what he's going to be a better version of Devin Haney, just like he said.
There you go. You still feel that way about me? Come on. Give me a hug.
No.
All right. Come on, Bill. You're just all right. He's out.
Well, guys, let me know what you think in the chat from that exchange. Did the always professional Todd Grisham deserve that kind of treatment from one Bill Haney? Honestly, the truth is being revealed. Most certainly, guys, not just in boxing, but in life altogether. Look at politics. Look at what's happening in politics right now. Well, the truth is revealing itself in the sport of boxing as well. And Devin Haney, in the immortal words of Jack Nicholson of A Few Good Men, he can't handle the truth. The truth of the matter is, one fighter, and I know he loves his son, but he has to understand. Notice what he said. You're not recognizing what my son has done for the sport. What exactly has Devin Haney done for the sport of boxing? Now, I have respect for every single fighter. Anyone who steps foot in the ring. Well, it takes a lot of courage, a lot of bravery, and a lot of nerve. A lot of confidence. It takes great character to merely step foot in the ring. Let's just get that out of the way. But look at the long, rich history of our beloved boxing. Look how long our rich history extends. And this guy wants to be heralded for doing what in boxing? He wants Todd Grisham and everyone involved to kiss his ass when he just took the headliner to court trying to sue him because he couldn't handle getting his ass whooped on the biggest stage, pay-per-view. called Ryan Garcia a drug cheat. Now, once again, he took something that at a time where it had no benefit of his performance in the ring. And that's, you can prove that. The Nevada State or the New York State Athletic Commission, their observations and investigation had no conclusive evidence that it did. And to be honest with you, it's sour grapes, and we all know it. And the fact that everyone booed when Bill Haney took the stage and Devin Haney took the stage says it all. He is wearing the black hat, and he can't stand it. He says he's fine with it, but obviously he can't stand it because he wanted Todd Grisham to kiss his ass. And why? This guy thinks his son did something for the sport, yet he's suing another fighter. Damn the consequences of that. Well, luckily, the consequences, fortunately for us and everyone involved in this business, it was thrown out. And we told you guys that was going to be the reaction, that it was frivolous and he was going to gain no leverage. And this was potential career suicide because you don't sue another fighter for getting your ass whooped. Now, once again, I bring up, oh, you don't recognize what my sport's done for boxing. No, dude. How about recognizing for once what the sport of boxing has done for you? Because the sport will still be here when your son retires. How about recognizing what this business has done for you and your son? Paint yourself lucky. Because honestly, your son's career was an accident waiting to happen. Take a loss like a man. That's what this sport was built on. It's a gentleman's sport. And this guy wants to cry about getting his ass whooped? You signed on the dotted line. You agreed to get paid more money because Ryan Garcia came in 3 pounds over the weight limit. You agreed to those terms, thinking that you were going to outclass him. And when that blew up in your face, you couldn't deal with it. And I say this, what the sport of boxing has done for him and not the other way around, because, guys, you tell me how many networks or platforms or anyone involved, how many have actually made money on the back of Devin Haney, the recipient of inflated purses by Matchroom Sports and Eddie Hearn. And once again, he's not giving him out of his own pocket. That's DAZN money. Did he make DAZN any money? No. It was an investment, and were they grateful and loyal to DAZN? No. He became a free agent and then fought on a Top Rank card, signed a deal with Top Rank, 3-fight deal. And this guy wants to be praised? This guy thinks his son deserves to be praised for his big contribution to the sport of boxing that has made him a multi-millionaire? Do you realize how many fighters will never see that kind of money ever? That have more heart, toughness, and give their lives to this business? And this guy wants to get his ass kissed for attempting to take down the sport by filing a frivolous lawsuit because he lost. He got his ass whooped. Yes, I just said it. He lost. I don't care what BoxRec says. We all saw it. It comes with the territory. You're going to lose. most fighters lose. And that's just part of the game. You take it like a man. You handle it like a gentleman. You don't cry about it. Ching Gao, guys. So anyway, I just had to get that off my chest. Because let's just face it, guys. Devin Haney, if he were actually somebody, he'd be headlining right now. Want to get his ass kissed after receiving inflated purses, turning down fights on his own after they gave him a shit ton of money at the prospect level, $3 million a fight, even during COVID, even though he couldn't sell out my living room on a Saturday night. And he turns down 2 fights last year, Sandor Martin and Liam Perra, for titles, for the WBC title and the IBF. Ching Gao. Yeah. Yes, you did, Daisy. Welcome to the show, ma'am. God bless you guys. Look, and look, I may sound, Daisy, I may sound Anglo on the air, but I am every bit of a proud beaner. Yes, I am. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. Yes. Home of, regardless of, what's that fat dude's name on, Bonson's name on the Boxing Voice now? You know, Two-Tone, Two-Tub, the Grotesque. Is that what he calls himself? The guy who doesn't know shit about boxing? Yeah, well, he always says chilaquiles. I question, does he even know what chilaquiles is? Flippin' delicious is what it is. So yes, I am puro Mexicano, sister. So there it is. So look, but yeah, it's in very poor taste. Who does this guy and Devin, who do they think they are? Boxing doesn't owe them shit. If anything, they owe boxing everything. Because this sport has been more than kind to them, more than generous. And he's never been profitable for any promoter or platform. Let's just get that straight. And no fighter is bigger than the sport. So if you expect anyone to embrace you with open arms and to kiss your ass, think again, because you just put yourself ahead of the sport. So you can kiss my ass. Yes, I said it. Yeah. And once again, guys, the sport doesn't owe them a damn thing. Because I know so many fighters, and I work with so many fighters that would do anything to fight on that kind of platform. And he disgraced the sport by suing Ryan Garcia. Thankfully, there was a judge that viewed it as a frivolous suit and threw it out of court. And there it is. Guys, at this time, it's my pleasure to welcome to the show my nephew, Mr. Tony Manzano.
Hey,
Tony, how art thou, my friend?
I'm good. Honestly, I agree with you. That was just great. Bill and Devin embarrassed themselves and the sport. Honestly, they should just. Honestly, Bill should just go back to selling drugs or something like that, or leave the sport, because I feel they're a cancer to the sport. They're doing more harm than good.
Look, and the reason why I brought this up first, Tony, because it sets the table for my next discussion. Because Turki Al-Sheikh has really painted himself into a corner. Devin Haney is the product and a perfect example of how entitled some of these guys get when you pay them inflated purses that far exceeds their market value. it ruins their scope of reality. They think they're much bigger than they actually are.
Is this what happened to Ryan?
No. Ryan's a genuine ticket seller. That guy can pull, he can put asses in seats. But this is what happens, though, when you pay guys inflated purses. It gives them the idea that they're a bigger attraction than they are. And you know what? Part of it is they don't know what the business is. They don't understand this side of the business. But fortunately for me, I had the luxury and the privilege of working with one of the arguably the best to have ever done it, promoter Don Chargan. That's why we're called W.A.W. Boxing, or a week after my mentor, Don Chargan.
I think Oscar learned from Don, didn't he?
Exactly. And I'm going to bring him up because he just turned down an assignment for his budding superstar, Virgil Ortiz Jr. And they declined Turki Al-Sheikh's generous offer to stick him in the ring opposite Bakram Murtazaliev, the badass who, well, made a statement by stopping Tim Tszyu in emphatic fashion last year in Florida, right? I think that was last April now.
It was last March, like at the end of March.
Well, yeah, so it's been about a year. And no one, I feel bad for Bakram because he's become the boogeyman at 154. Because here it is, guys, and once again, we profess this, and this is straight from Don Chargan. I learned everything I know. The same guy, the same gentleman, the same boxing genius who taught Eric Gomez, Richard Schaefer, and Oscar De La Hoya everything they know about the business of boxing. I was lucky enough to be working with Don at the time, and he taught me everything I know about the business. Right? And so Oscar De La Hoya goes, well, you know what? We cannot stick him in with beast after beast after beast. After facing Bolachuk and then after facing Madrimov. Yeah, this guy needs just a tune-up or a layup. He needs to stay active, yeah, but we're going to really shorten his career if we stick him beast after beast after beast. Do you know who taught us that? That's Don Chargan. Because if you fight Goliath after Goliath after Goliath, boy, you're going to have a short but glorious career. And this is why Dana White's plan will crash and burn. It will not work. And he is going to merely shit on our beloved boxing after he's done with it.
Yeah, and you said it, I think it was it last night or the night before that you said the only way this can work if TKO of Ari Emanuel and Dana White buys Top Rank, correct?
That's it. Yep. Well, look, and one of the reasons why I wanted to go live tonight is because I listened back to a little bit of it and I wasn't happy because I was so upset about things. Forgive me, Lord. I was so upset about things. I sounded like I was just constantly screaming over the air. And I didn't want to leave it that way. And so I'm going to talk about everything. We're going to talk about the WBC. We're going to talk about Turki Al-Sheikh. We're going to talk about Dana White's involvement and the future of boxing in the American market. We're also going to talk about our brother, Rick Glazer. And he went public with the Tank Davis Lamont Roach numbers. We're going to talk about all of that tonight, Tony. How do you like that, brother?
Yeah. And so do you think Oscar's now, like, with this Virgil thing, do you think he's starting to, do you think he's regretting putting him too early with these these two, instead of doing layups first, then going into Boychuk, Murtazaliev, and wait, who did he fight? Madrimov, then Murtazaliev. do you think Oscar feels that he might have made a mistake in throwing him in too soon with those other two?
No, because he did extremely well against two guys, a former champion and a guy who, well, deserves to be champion. Virgil Ortiz is ready for the big stage. He's ready for any assignment at 54. And I give him a very good chance of beating anyone at 54, including Terrence Crawford.
How about the unified champion at one, the undisputed champion of the Charlo brother?
Well, look, let me just tell you what I know about Jermell and Jamal. They are semi-retired. They've made enough money. And they're just checked out mentally. Guys, and when you're checked out mentally, you shouldn't step in the ring ever. You shouldn't step in the ring unless you're 100% focused on the sport and you get the most of yourself in camp, because boxing, there's a saying in this business. You can play football, you can play baseball, but you can't play boxing. It can be a very, very painful lesson that can affect the rest of your life.
See, and Joe, I've always said this when it comes to football, I understand you're playing football, you're playing baseball, you're playing basketball, and you're playing hockey, and you're competing in swimming. But what I'm going to say is those to me, it's maybe 30% physical, maybe 70% mental. Do you agree?
Well, no. It's 90. Well, look, everything in life is mental. And now I'll quote the great Henry Ford, right, of the Ford Corporation. He stated a long time ago, and he's right on the money. There are two types of people in this world: those who think they can do something, and those who think they can't. And at the end of the day, they're both right. Everything depends on your mentality. Everything. So Emmanuel Stewart used to say, look, I know this sport is physically demanding, but it's 90% mental. And if you notice, Joseph, and once again, I've been so blessed, thanks be to God. I had the luxury of not only working with great guys like James Gogi, Ronnie Shields, Abel Sanchez, Joe Goosen, Robert Garcia, Barry Hunter. Great guys. Very knowledgeable. But I had the privilege of working very closely with Emmanuel Stewart as well as Don King. And I was mentored by the both of them. And Emmanuel Stewart insisted, Joseph, if you notice, most of my training, a lot of my training is actually out of the ring as well. A lot of my training is getting my fighters in peak mental condition, because I find out and I get to know every single one of my fighters on a very intimate and personal level, where I know how to motivate them, and I know how to talk to them, and I know what makes them tick, and I know what to work on. And that's what made him such a legend in this business, and ultimately the trainer of champions. Yeah. Boxing is mental. Look at the job that Emmanuel Stewart did with Oliver McCall. That guy was viewed as a head case. And Don King, I'll tell you a story, guys. And this is one of the last stories that Emmanuel Stewart shared with me. And he goes, it's funny. I remember Oliver McCall. He was, and once again, this is a very small community, Joseph, and you'll see that as you go forward. And everybody talks. Everyone knows each other. And so Oliver McCall, everyone knew he was a wild card, a loose cannon, the head case, and had some dependency issues. And we'll just leave it at that. And he said, so his reputation preceded himself. And he said one day his promoter, Don King, who's a dear friend of mine, he said, called me up and said, you know what, Emmanuel, I need your services. No one wants to work with this guy, but we've been given the opportunity by the IBF to fight their champion, Lennox Lewis. And no one wants to train him. And Emmanuel responded, well, look, I mean, from what I've heard, I know I can understand why. It's not worth the trouble. And Don King says, I'm desperate. Can you please at least meet with him? Yes, I look, for you, Don, I'll do it. I'll meet with him, but I'm not going to promise you anything. Just send him over the crunk and I'll sit down with him and I'll let you know. And so the following week, Don King flies Oliver McCall to Detroit, Michigan, and they have a heart-to-heart. Emmanuel sits down with him for about 3 hours, and he calls Don King and says, well, Don, look, I've spoken with Oliver. He's a good guy, very kind of misguided, and he's been dealt a very, very hard hand, which is not unusual in boxing. That's probably why he's fighting. So I will agree to fight him or train him for this fight and this fight only. And so Emmanuel agrees to do it. And so when he gets to camp, Oliver, he moves over and he stays with Emmanuel at his house. And Emmanuel says this. Now, look, I've been watching Lennox Lewis ever since he was an amateur. Now, I'll be honest, and I'm going to lay it out because it's my business and it's my job to assess everything exactly the way it is, not to sugarcoat anything. And so I'm going to be honest with you. He is more athletically gifted. He's got better power. He's got a deeper amateur background. He's smarter. He's more experienced. And so the cards are stacked against you. But what I have noticed by watching him fight is that he's almost too confident, where he lets that right hand go a lot more than he should and doesn't set everything up behind the jab like he should. And he said, so we're going to work on one thing. We're going to focus because we can't correct all of your shortcomings in one camp. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on one strategy, and that's you slipping the right hand, countering with the left hook, right hand combination. That's all we're going to work on for the next 6 weeks because we only have 6 weeks to work. And hopefully we will see it unfold in our favor.
Mhm.
And guess what happened?
It worked.
It worked. And that's what made Emmanuel the genius that he was.
I have another head case. I'm not going to say his name, but he's a former boxer that has a YouTube channel that worked with Emmanuel before. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I know a lot of them. Keep going.
I'm trying to avoid saying his name because I follow him on YouTube. His nickname is K9.
Oh, Cornelius Bundridge. I can't stand that guy. And I also have a story to tell you about K9.
Yeah, no, that's I heard stories from other trainers that said the guy was like a head case too.
Well, look, and this is it. Look, I'll just say this. Cornelius, and at the time I was doing publicist work for all of Emmanuel's fighters. And Emmanuel not only trained him, but also managed his career. And I'll be honest, it sickened me the way he treated Emmanuel the last year of his life. And I stopped paying attention to K9 or even writing in because I made my start in this business by writing exclusively and doing publicist work for fighters before I started doing commentary and ring announcing. And K9 Bundridge, he broke Emmanuel Stewart's heart because Emmanuel loved all of his fighters. He would tell me often, hey, you know what, Joseph? Look, everything I've taught these young men and women, because he trained a lot of young female amateurs and pros also. He said, everything I've taught, I've been privileged to teach these young men and women, pale in comparison to what they've taught me about life. That's what he said. The great Emmanuel Stewart was so humble and is so good. Everything about him was good. He was
And Sugar's
truly
like that
blessed
too.
into the business. And so he found out that Canine couldn't afford to get his lights turned on. So he paid for his electric bill to turn the power back on at his house. And he said, you know what, Canine, come over. I'm going to train you. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to be your manager also. And I'll get you some opportunities. And he loved Canine. He never charged him a dime for training him, being his manager. He even paid his dues and gave him a gold watch on his birthday. And so Emmanuel got him a 3-fight deal with Golden Boy Promotions when they had Canelo Alvarez, because he was a potential opponent if he could win a world title. And he was fighting Corey Spinks for the IBF title. And it's funny, at the Indio, California Fantasy Springs Casino. And, oh my goodness, it breaks my heart just to say this. And Emmanuel, look, if you got out of line or didn't do what he was saying, boy, he got on your ass. And there was no two ways about it. He even got on my ass several times. And I just took it because that's Emmanuel Stewart. Obviously, if he's complaining about something,
You better listen.
It's coming from a good place. Now, once again, if you knew Emmanuel, you knew that it was coming from a good place, that he had your best interest at heart, that he wanted what was best for you, and he knew that he was what was best for you. And so the way he was, you took it because you knew it was coming from a good place. Because he cared about everybody. And so anyway, he's fighting Corey Spinks for the IBF title at 154 pounds. And Robert Byrd wasn't supposed to do this, but because everyone loved Emmanuel, he came up to him between rounds, I think it was between 6 and 7, and he said, hey, your guy's losing. Tell him to pick it up because he's losing on points. And it was a very, very sloppy, uneventful fight. And Emmanuel, after receiving that message from his brother, Robert Byrd, right? Hall of Fame referee. Emmanuel just turned it up and said, look, motherfucker, blah, 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 and he just tore into Canine. And so what did Canine do? The very next round, goes out and knocks out Corey Spinks. And so Emmanuel Stewart is so proud of Canine. And so after the fight, he had a surprise for Canine Bundridge. So who was there? Oscar De La Hoya, Eric Gomez, Roberto Diaz, and Richard Schaefer. They're all there. And so after the fight, what do they do? They offer Canine a 3-year deal, or a 3-fight deal, I should say. And all he has to do is sign it, and he's taken care of receiving big paydays for the next 3 fights, potentially a Canelo fight, right? And so what does he do? Pushes the contract back at Golden Boy and says, you know what? I'm on my own now. I didn't like the way you were talking to me during that fight. And so, you know what? I deserve better. You know what? You've been holding me back. And you know what? I don't want to work with you anymore. He said, I want to be my own promoter. I want to be my own manager. I want to manage my own career. You've been holding me back, and you're the reason why I haven't gotten the Canelo fight thus far.
That
And
backfired.
it broke Emmanuel's heart. And so for that reason, I never wrote another article promoting K9's career. I never once spoke a kind word about him because there was no one better in this business than Emmanuel Stewart.
Well,
and here's what made it worse. Emmanuel Stewart was going through health issues at the time, and he didn't even know it because he was such a tough guy, former fighter, right? He's such a tough guy. He had such a high threshold for pain that he had, what is it called? Diverticulitis in his colon. And he would mention from time to time that his stomach was in knots and he didn't feel good. But he because he was such a strong man and took it like a man, that he waited too long to go to the hospital. And unfortunately, he didn't go to the hospital until it ruptured within him. And that's what killed him. And in my opinion, and I will take this to my grave, the K9 situation put him over because he loved K9 and it broke his heart. And it caused him to worry, and it affected him physically and mentally. And I blame K9 for Emmanuel Stewart's passing.
Joe, I have a question. Was that one of, you said Emmanuel was such a nice guy. Was that and also I'm not sure what the word is, like, was that a weakness for him too, that he was too nice to where he allowed people to walk over him and stuff like that, fighters and stuff like that? Like, do you know what I'm asking?
No. I'll say this, and this is the same reason, for the same reason that James Gogi is now training fighters in Mexico, because he can't stand this sense of entitlement. And once again, it fits right into what we were talking about when we started this show off in Devin Haney and Bill Haney. These guys have this strange sense of entitlement. And I speak from experience, guys. They genuinely believe that everyone involved should be just doing this for their benefit out of the kindness of their hearts, and they should make all the money. That's what they genuinely think. They want to be exalted. They want to get their asses kissed. They want to get their ego stroked. And that's, it broke my heart. And you know what? Emmanuel Stewart, he treated everyone the same. He loved everyone. But it was like a stern father, where if he knew you were fucking up, now a perfect example of this, when he loved Lennox Lewis. And what did he say to him when he wasn't putting Mike Tyson on his ass when they fought? He tore into Lennox. He tore into him. And he started yelling him live on the pay-per-view. That's how much he loved him. But he was screaming at him because he said, look, you let him hang around too long, he's going to hit you with something, and it's going to hurt you. Put this guy on his ass and get him out of here. What are you doing? You're fucking around. And he would drill you because he knew it was in your best interest. And fighters, before he passed away, just couldn't deal with it. They couldn't deal with the reality. They couldn't deal with that kind of realism, that kind of truth. And that's what Emmanuel had a hard time comprehending and dealing with. Fighters changed. Emmanuel didn't.
So Emmanuel was a bygone.
Look, and the same would have happened to Customato had he lived as long as Emmanuel. He would have experienced the same thing.
Oh, I was gonna ask you, did you ever, by the time you started in the business, was Eddie's father already retired?
Eddie? You talking about Barry?
Yeah, was Barry already retired by the time you started in the sport, or was he still in charge of
Look, Barry is a Hall of Fame promoter for a reason. But he didn't just deal with boxing, he dealt with a lot of other sports.
No, I'm talking about the boxing aspect specifically. By the time you started in the sport of boxing specifically, was Barry already retired from the sport promoting?
Put it this way, he didn't have the presence that his son Eddie has right now. Look, and I'll be honest, I'm going to bring up Eddie Hearn too. What he said about Lou DiBella, and you know I'm one of the biggest critics of Eddie Hearn, right? You know this. But I need to give credit to where credit's due. Lou DiBella went on Ariel, what's his name?
Helwani,
yeah. Who's doing a great job promoting the sport of boxing right now. Better than most diehard fans or
announcers,
tribes, right? And he's doing a very good job spotlighting the sport of boxing. And he's becoming a really integral and diehard fan because of all the great product. He sees the great product. And what did Lou DiBella do earlier this week? Jumped on his platform and just shit all over the sport. Shredding Eddie Hearn. Shredding everyone in this business, Al Heyman. Shredding Turki Al-Sheikh. Shredding Dana White. And Eddie Hearn came out and said, well, look, I love Lou DiBella, and I've got a great working relationship with him. But let's just be honest here, right? He's a little bitter that, he just hasn't. Let's just face it. He's a bitter man. And he's hoping for the demise of several people in this business. And look, let's just face it. I don't care what he thinks. Have a great working relationship with Turki Al-Sheikh, and I'm going to continue making money for the sport of boxing, as well as matchroom sport. And I'm happy to do it. And I'm happy to work with others. And unfortunately, Lou isn't. And he's right on the money. Lou is a disgruntled, bitter piece of shit. And he's probably still mad that Kamala Harris lost the election.
Yeah, no. And for me, I think Lou comes from Lou was at the highest powers in the 80s and 90s. By the time the 2000s, he became a afterthought by the 2000s. Do you agree?
Well, look, let's just face it. He was most effective as the president of HBO Sports. He did a brilliant job. Being the executive, being the head of boxing programming. And you know what? And Lou, it was almost a perfect storm with Lou, where Lou was not only because HBO and Showtime Sports and most networks, they like to hire lawyers as their head of programming in sports because they can oversee the contracts and protect the network investment, right?
Yeah.
That's why they like to hire attorneys. And it was a perfect storm because not only was Lou a Harvard graduate, Harvard law attorney, but he was also a lifelong boxing guy. So he knew the sport and the business inside and out. That's a very rare thing. The only guy who had his same accreditations was probably Ken Hirschman, right? Who was also the executive at both Showtime and HBO, right?
Yeah.
And so Lou DiBella, he did his best work at HBO. Unfortunately, he thought he could do better as a promoter. But because he was such an asshole and a drug addict, and yeah, I can't believe I just said that on the air, but I'll say it again. Because he was such an asshole and a drug addict that he didn't fulfill his potential as a promoter.
Well, was he the one that promoted the?
Every time I met Lou DiBella, he was not only an asshole, but he was coked up beyond belief.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, was he the one? I can't remember. Was he the one that promoted the fight with Morales and Marquez, Juan Manuel Marquez, or that was Showtime?
Yeah, Showtime did that. So I'll tell you what he did, and once again, shout out to my brother James Bell from the Boxing Source, JBZ, if you're on X, right? Guys, if you haven't already, please go subscribe.
I didn't know that. Wow, that's surprising. I didn't know Lou DiBella was involved in baseball.
And he says this. Yes, Lou DiBella has been very involved with baseball for some time. And yeah, he manages and is part owner of a minor league squad. And I love that's the breeding ground for the talent of the major leagues. And I love baseball. Like, truth be known, Anthony, baseball is actually my favorite pastime. It's by far the most majestic of all American pastimes. I love baseball. In fact, I can't wait for April to come around.
Yeah,
It's my favorite time of year.
Yeah, no, for me, I was my two favorite sports are soccer and baseball. And
right on, brother. I tell you what, I need to step away for a Veda test. Can you please share your thoughts on our next topic? The slander that the WBC has been receiving this week. Share your thoughts, and I'll be right back.
No, I don't know what the slander is. I haven't been paying attention.
Everyone has been criticizing the WBC.
It's bitter fans that can't stand the head of the Mauricio Suleiman. That I think that's where all the slander is coming from. It's fans specifically that are doing this. I bet you, James, Boxing Source. Because they can't stand Mauricio creating all these belts to create profits for the sport. All these like Ring Magazine belts and all these like subtitles within the divisions, like an interim belt and stuff like that. So that's where all the slam.
Anthony, are you still there?
Yes. No, I just got a tweet from Rick while I'm talking to you.
Rick?
Yeah, Rick was just tweeted that HBO has been out of the sport since 2018 and Lou's still in the sport in 2025.
Yep, there it is. I tell you what, Lou DiBella, though, is a disgruntled, old, bitter, liberal bitch. Yes, I said it.
Yeah, no.
And once again,
What I said when you asked what my thoughts were about the slander, it's fans hating on Mauricio Suleiman because he created so many belts, like these like paper titles, like the ring title and these interim titles within the division. It created this convoluted situation that we had because Mauricio has created so many titles. Do you agree?
well, look, it's in my opinion, you have to take all of the disgruntled comments and negativity from the boxing media, most of it anyway, and the fans with a grain of salt. Because it look like, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to go live tonight, because I was a little unfair on Monday, and I was a little hot under the collar. Now I was having a moment, and my apologies for that, guys. I listened back to a little bit of it, and I couldn't stomach listening more than 5 minutes because I felt like I was screaming at everybody. And so I'm gonna give you the good and the bad of the sanctioned organization, specifically the WBC. Right?
Yes.
And so I'm going to try to stay as neutral and as humble as I possibly can. Now, a lot of people regurgitate this bullshit that, oh, you know what, man, the sanctioned organizations are ruining the sport because they have too many belts. They take 3% of these fighters, these hardworking fighters' purses. And, you know, where are they for the retired fighters? They're not providing pensions for them. Look, I will say this, that's a bit unfair, because the reason why the sanctioned organizations came up with all of these extra belts, that has everything to do with guys who aren't
entitled.
Like well, guys who aren't like Lou DiBella, because Lou DiBella actually knew boxing when he was the executive at HBO. Most network executives wouldn't know a left hook from a fish hook. They don't know shit about the sport or this business. They just want to see ratings. And so what they said, they started a long time ago, they started two really destructive trends for the business. First one, when and I know this to be true because I know so many people in this business, on the business side of it. Several promoters and managers have told me that network executives, when you would bring a fighter to them and ask them for a TV date, they would someone would pitch them, hey, I've got a guy who's great. He's a budding superstar, and we want you to see him, and we want the opportunity to fight on this network. And they say, well, who is he? And the promoter or manager would pitch them with the idea. And if you didn't have an undefeated record, they would say, wait a minute. He's 18-2. What's wrong with him? What is a promoter supposed to say? What do you mean what's wrong with him? He's 18-2. He's great. Well, he's got 2 losses on his record. What's wrong with him? And so that, because the networks pay for everything, at least they used to, that put the sanctioning organizations and the promoters, everyone involved, in check, that it was in their best interest, if they wanted to make some real money, that they had to cultivate fighters to the point where they were undefeated, padding the record just so they could appear on network TV. And 2, and here's the part where it applies to WBC. When a promoter would come up with a matchup and say, this is what we have for this date, and if they had a contract with HBO or Showtime or ESPN, all 3 network executives would say, well, is it for a title? And the promoter would say, come back with, well, no, but they're the cusp of fighting for a world title. And what would their response be? Well, we're not interested because we draw a lot more ratings and make a lot more money if we show title fights. And so the WBC, as a response to this, and all the other sanctioning organizations, as a response to that, came up with multiple belts per division to give hardworking young fighters opportunities to showcase their talents on network TV.
So blame the networks for these titles, not
You
the
cannot blame the WBC for doing what they thought was best. And this goes back to Jose, not Mauricio. He's just doing what his dad did. You cannot put the blame on the sanctioning organizations for creating more opportunities for their hardworking, hungry young fighters. That's the network executives who didn't know shit from Shinola about the business of boxing.
Lou DiBella.
And you're not going to hear that from any other podcast on YouTube. Because I've been in this business for over 20 years. And I know pretty much everyone in this business. And I know how it works. And unfortunately, it's the golden rule. Boxing is run by the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. And so at the time, all of the networks had the power. They were the ones paying for the licensing fees. Without them, you had nothing. And so what was the sanctioning organization supposed to do? That's why they created these bogus titles, these interim titles, these regular belts. And the
ring belt, the super
WBC
title.
Came up with these absurd titles. The MSNBC belt, whatever the fuck it was called. Like the Latino belt. The WBO came up with the Latino title. What the hell?
I remember
is
the Intercontinental. Remember the Intercontinental? I think it was a Super Continental or something like that. That's in the
It was absurd, and they did this out of necessity. And most people don't know this. They just lambaste the sanctioning organizations because they were creating out of necessity more opportunities for these hungry young fighters. So why should and someone needs to tell these fans. And once again, we've got Mike Coppinger, right? I'm going to read you a tweet from Mike Coppinger, and I had to reply on it. Let me pull it up, guys. Hold on just 1 second.
I thought you were going to say Dan Rafael.
Dan Rafael's coming up, brother. But actually, Dan Rafael actually made me proud today. In his,
am I living in a alternate universe when you're complimenting Dan Rafael?
Yeah, it seems like it, doesn't it? Yeah. Look, I give, once again, guys, I give credit to wherever credit's due, because I don't hold grudges except for Canine Bundridge. Okay, it doesn't behoove me being a Christian and being unforgiving. I don't do that. That's a mortal sin. Guys, if you didn't know, having forgiveness in your heart doesn't do anything for the opposite party who did you wrong. It's what it does is it enhances your relationship with our Heavenly Father. And if He forgives you for your sinfulness, the least you should do is forgive everyone who seemingly does you wrong, right? And so this is what Mike Coppinger had to say. So Frank Warren was on an interview on Box Nation, and he was basically defending the 4-belt system. He said, well, it's worked for over the years. We know who the number 1 heavyweight is, according to everybody, based off the official result of the fight. Now, Usyk became undisputed by fighting all of the other champions. He earned that. And we got that result because of the 4-belt system. Same with Naoya Inoue. Same with Canelo Alvarez. I mean, so it actually works. He was defending the 4-belt system. And this is Hall of Fame promoter Frank Warren, Queensberry Boxing, right?
But it doesn't work in every division, though. That's the issue.
This is what Mike Coppinger had to retort as a result of that. He retweeted and he commented on this. Who does it work for exactly? Certainly not the fans or the sport at large. Very confusing to the public. What other sport has more than one champion, let alone 4? And I stated this once again. I will be, on occasion, the sport's biggest critic, and definitely the sanctioning organizations. But I have to give credit. I have to be fair, because I only see the sport that way. I have no dog in the hunt. I just want the business to flourish. My only bias, guys, and Anthony, you know this because you've known me for years. The only bias I have is that if it is good for the sport and if it is good for the business, I will wholeheartedly support it 100%. But if it's bad for the sport, I will wholeheartedly be against it 100%. That's my only bias. And so this is how I responded. I said, Mike, you're looking at this the wrong way. Every sport goes through a process of elimination to eventually become the undisputed champion. Win your division in other sports, win your division, then win the conference tournament, and then the entire league championship. Every sport has a tournament-style platform. Why can't boxing? And belts, they serve as the tournament-style platform. Guys, we're going to see Joseph Parker versus Usyk as a result. Hasn't he earned that?
You know what it was? I think, Joe, I'm going to actually play a little bit devil's advocate. You know what it is?
Be my guest. That's why you're here, my friend.
What I was going to say is I think the reason why fans are kind of and certain media people are upset about the 4-belt system is they want to bring back those the actual like those tournaments that we used to see on ESPN, ABC, and stuff like that. I mean, Fox and stuff. You know, the ones I'm talking about, like those title tournaments, instead of the actual like having these like all these all these belts. They want those those tournaments back. Do you know the ones I'm talking about? The ones that they used to have in the 90s to determine who the champion.
Look, Ken Hirschman on Showtime was heralded for the Super 6, the last great tournament of boxing. How did that play out? By the end of the tournament, because it's everyone. Look, the biggest problem with this business, and my brother James from the Boxing Source, I've spoken to him intimately about this. Like I've vented when I've been disgruntled about the business, right? And he's my brother. I can tell him anything. I love you, James. And I remember the evening. It was several months ago, and I aired out my frustrations, saying that. Well, hold on, real quick. Hold on.
Hola, Jose.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying hi to Jose. He was saying hi to both of us.
Oh, Jose Barrera. Welcome to the show, sir. God bless you, my friend. But I confided in James. Well, look, I forgot what I was going to say now. Chingao. because there's
Oh,
so many.
it's about it's about what I said earlier about the
Repeat
tournaments.
what you said. The tournament. Okay, very good. The problem with this sport is it's comprised of thousands of sole proprietorships where everyone is looking out for their best interests, and no one involved is looking out for the health of the sport. That's a huge problem within the business of boxing. So when you have a tournament, now, once again, go back to what Oscar De La Hoya said. Yeah, you know what? We just faced Boachuk and we just faced Madrimov. Virgil Ortiz deserves a layup. We want to keep him active, but he deserves a tune-up, a soft touch. He deserves it after his last two performances. And you know what? He's good enough where we feel confident in facing anyone at 154. But we understand that this guy has the potential to be a superstar. And we're knowledgeable enough where we're not going to ruin him like Dana White. And so they're doing what's best for them. Is that necessarily what's best for the sport?
No.
Well, maybe, because maybe the longevity of a fighter like Virgil Ortiz, it's what's best for the sport. That once again, you have to judge slowly, guys. And this show, in which I'm not full of piss and vinegar, I'm going to be as clear and as unbiased as I possibly can to give you both sides of the argument. Because let's just face it, guys, be real. Most pundits of boxing aren't willing to do that. Definitely not Lou DiBella, and definitely not Eddie Hearn. Like, once again, their commentary is filled with what's best for them. And my only bias is what's best for the health of the sport. Truly. And once again, I don't care unless you're signing my paychecks. I'm not going to be biased one way or the other. But I will say this, the Super 6 tournament, let's go back and look at that on Showtime with Ken Hirschman. By the end of the tournament, they had to replace several fighters because they couldn't hit. Once again, going back to what De La Hoya said, you can't put your superstar in with and your prospect or your champion, someone who you've invested millions in. You can't pit him with Goliath after Goliath after Goliath after Goliath. That shortens your career. And our business, we still have to, we're not just in it to make money. We have to look after the health of these fighters. And we have to make decisions what's best for them. So that's why these tournaments don't work these days. So that's the reason why you don't see it anymore. But guys, let's be honest. Riyadh season with Turki Al-Sheikh, that's been basically a tournament, especially in the heavyweight division. They've been fighting each other.
Joe, I'm going to use a comparison. I'm not sure if you agree with this in terms of the fighters and stuff like that. You know how Vince, to get away from paying insurance to his entertainers or the people he would label them as independent contractors to get away from having to allow them to unionize or get insurance. I think that's what I would say that's what boxing is. These fighters are independent contractors where they can jump between promoters and stuff like that once their contract finishes. So would you agree with that comparison or not really?
Well, look, if you're bringing up Dana White, he obviously took notes from Vince McMahon because Vince destroyed the other regions of wrestling, and he went national and he monopolized the business. That's what Dana White did with UFC. Now that segues perfectly into our next topic. Is Dana White going to be successful in monopolizing and revolutionizing the sport of boxing?
For me, it's a wait and see.
For me, it's a foregone conclusion. And listening, and once again, I told you I was going to give Dan Raphael a ton of credit on this show. Right? Oh, hold on. Is it Brother James' birthday? Holy shit. And he says, Joe, sing happy birthday. I will. Guys, join with me, right? James, I love you, brother. Happy birthday to you. You're a credit to the business, and I consider you a dear friend. God bless you, my friend. The guys on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to
you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Brother James, you motherfucker. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, my brother James. We love you, man.
¿Qué
Keep
pasa,
on doing
Alberto?
what you do, man. We love you, brother, on the show. You are an integral part of this show and as well as the business. We love you, man. You are one of the hardest working members of this fraternity. So thank you, brother, for doing what you do. And just know that we love you and we are in your corner, my friend. Have a wonderful birthday with many pleasant and healthy returns. God bless you, my friend.
Yeah, like I said, for me, I'm going to say it's a wait and see with Dana, to be honest, before I actually say it's bad or good for the sport. Is that a good way to think about it? Or since you're so jaded, it's hard to have a wait and see approach to see what happens?
I can tell you with great certainty. And once again, this is why I lean on always. And I'm very, very fortunate and I'm very thankful for the time I got to work with Don Chargan and Emmanuel Stewart. They taught me everything I know about the business. And once again, I don't want to discount what an integral part and mentor one of my best friends, James Gogi, has meant to me and has been in this business. And I will tell you this, if I hadn't worked with James Gogi extensively in the beginning of my career, I would have never received the opportunity to work with Don Chargan or Emmanuel Stewart. Let's just put that out there, because James, like most young reporters who enter this business, think they're hot shit, and I was no different. I didn't have a humble bone in my body. I thought I was hot shit, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about boxing, like Dana White right now. And when I met James Gogi and started covering some of his fights and fighters, he schooled me in a way that really humbled me. And I'm like, holy shit, I don't know shit about this business. And without James's tutelage, I would have never gained the opportunity to work with Don or Emmanuel. And that's the God's honest truth. So I can't discount that, guys. James is my brother, and I love him dearly.
Both Dons or just Don Chargan?
Don Chargan, and I never really got to work closely with Don King. I worked several of his events, and I got to speak to him very closely. In fact, I'll give you this tidbit. In a very intimate conversation with Don King, I asked him, I said, off the record, if there's anything you could change about this business, what would it be? And he said, well, you know what? I'm getting older. And you know what? I would love to give all of these fighters a damn personality transplant so they could sell the fight and I didn't have to.
Wow.
And that's a true story, guys. And so lean in on my experience from Don Chargan and Emmanuel.
Oh, before you continue, Joe,
Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to ask you before you continue, did you ever have a chance to have any intimate conversation with Jose Suleiman before he passed?
Yes. And in fact, he didn't even want to come on my show. The first podcast I ever had, before it was called podcast, it was called Blog Talk Radio back in the day. And we had the big Blog Talk Radio show on East Side Boxing, which is now Boxing News 24. And Jose turned me down the first 2 times because he had received such terrible treatment from the guys on Max Boxing, Ring TV, all those fucking hacks that wanted to lay the wood for Jose. And upon doing my research, Jose, I found from just speaking to guys in the business and understanding his history in developing the WBC from the ground up, he had brought upon so many different innovations that we take for granted today in the sport of boxing. Like, most people don't realize that the great man Jose was. He actually introduced the thumbless gloves, right? Because back in the day, you could actually poke someone's eye with your thumb because it didn't have that attachment to the rest of the mitt. And Jose Suleiman said that this isn't right. We need to look out for the fighters. Let's introduce thumbless gloves. The WBC championed that cause before anyone else, and they introduced that to the sport. Now, some of their recommendations didn't catch fire like that one. Like, let's just be honest, guys. It's good in theory, but it removes the drama from the fight. Open scoring, which they tried for decades. That one fell flat, and the fans didn't like it very much. Okay, let's welcome right now to the show. Martin, 9400. Good to see you, man. Thank you for being back. And he says, word is TKO won't launch their league until 2026. I assume they think it'll take at least that long to get the Ali Act repealed. Once again, do you really think they're going to repeal legislation for someone who has the Saudi national interest at heart? No, they won't. And they won't do it for Dana White because they don't care. Now, they cared about PEDs and steroids in baseball, but they don't give 2 shits about the business of boxing right now. And why? Because it's a fringe pastime now. So you can forget about the Ali Act being repealed. It's not going to. It's not going to budge.
What was it? Can you explain open scoring, Joe?
Hold on, Tony. I will say this, though. From what I've been told, several people involved, that they're going to launch in September. Dana White's first fight as a part in a launching of the TKO League is going to be Canelo versus Crawford. 2 free agents who are not under the promotional contract of any major promoter. They're 2 free agents, and that's going to be the launching of the new league in September.
Wow, I didn't know that. Wow.
And that more than likely, guys, is going to take place at the, what is it called? That special place in Vegas. It's owned by MGM also. It's the Sphere.
T-Mobile.
No, it's not the T-Mobile. It's the Sphere, right?
Yeah, the Sphere.
Okay, well, let me once again go back to Dan Raphael. And I give him a lot of credit for being the boxing guy that he is. And I never give him credit, right? Because he's an asshole in real life. Yeah, I said it. But he had the best interest at heart. Hold on, James. James? Yeah, he lost his ass for MMA, but Vegas loves Canelo. The only reason why he used the Sphere, because he didn't anticipate the MGM Grand, who owns the Sphere, to offer Canelo Alvarez versus who's the guy who's fighting this Saturday in the co-main event? What's his name? The Puerto Rican New Yorker, the Puerto Rican American.
Zayas.
No, he's a guy who's not from Puerto Rico. He's from New York, but he claims Puerto Rican heritage. What's his name? The heavyweight who just fought Canelo.
My God, I know who you're talking about. My God. Berlanga.
Thank you. Hamburger Langa. Thank you. So to bring Canelo to Vegas on the same weekend as the Sphere in MMA, right, in UFC. So they actually paid Canelo a guaranteed site fee of $25 million. So he could actually come the same weekend. So you're saying that he may use the Sphere. So look, he's going to use Canelo because he understands after this last brutal experience in which he lost millions of dollars for the UFC. He understands, he learned a hard lesson that Vegas loves Canelo on Mexican Independence Weekend. So trust me when I tell you this. He's going to his first fight as part of the TKO League is going to be Canelo versus Crawford in September in the Sphere.
Oh, my God.
So take it to the bank, guys. That's guaranteed. Guaranteed. But I will say this, though, guys. So going back to Dan Rafael said, Dana, so you don't plan on working with the sanctioned organizations? And Dana responded, well, I'd rather not work with those guys because, we want to change the sport. And Dan Rafael reminded him, well, that's going to be in breach of the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act. So have you thought this out? And Dana's like, well, we'll figure that out, but I'd rather not work with him. And then he brought up, so I hear you're going to eliminate some certain weight divisions. And Dana said, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. There are way too many divisions in boxing. We're going to eliminate some of them. And, it's ridiculous to have some of these lower weight divisions that have they should be fighting all in one division.
Wait.
That tells me, and once again, go back and listen to this interview, guys, because I listened to it. And it became blatantly obvious that Dana White has no idea what he's doing here. He knows nothing about the business of boxing or what it takes to cultivate stars and to cultivate fighters' careers. Guys, this is apples to oranges. The only reason why he was able to flourish in the MMA because he monopolized that industry. He had the entire racket. And as a result, he was able to shortchange his athletes, exploit them, and take advantage of them while pocketing the overwhelming majority of the proceeds. In boxing, we can't do that. And once again, I'm going to remind you guys, why do you think he calls his stand-up fighters strikers and not boxers?
Why? Because their footwork is not really.
No. Here's why, and it has everything to do with money. Because if he called them, and he told Joe Rogan and all of his commentators, never refer to a stand-up fighter as a boxer puncher, or you're fired. Call them strikers from this point forward. And do you know why?
No, I I have a theory, but I don't know the
Well,
exact.
here's why. I'm going to tell you why. And fans should know about this. And why aren't writers writing about this? Dana White did this so he could shortchange his athletes, and they didn't have to be transparent. In accordance with the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act, in accordance with that piece of legislation, because of Don King and Bob Arum and Main Events and everyone else that came before them, you have to be transparent and open the books, show them where the money goes, show them how much you make to protect the fighter's interest. So now the state athletic commissions, the promoters, have to be transparent and disclose how much they sell, how much they make to everyone involved. Dana doesn't want that. And so for that reason, he will not succeed, because everyone who's grown accustomed to making X amount of dollars, inflated purses for their efforts, do you really think they're going to want to work with Dana White? Not only is he going to stick you in 50-50 matchups, but he's going to shortchange your ass as well. And he doesn't care. He's going to promote the brand, just like UFC, and not promote the individual fighter. And so how does he plan on nurturing and cultivating the next big stars of boxing? Because that takes time, effort, and money. And the reason why he wants to stick guys in tough, because he understands that it shortens the lifespan of their career. That's the reality of this, guys. And it became very evident in this interview with Dan Raphael. That's why I'm giving him credit. He asked all the right questions, and he received the most glaring apparent answers. And it's obvious to anyone who listens to this and who understands the business of boxing that Dana White doesn't know shit about boxing and how this business is run. And if he thinks he's going to revolutionize,
Dana has an ego, and it's like you said, he learned it from Vince. He learned that from Vince. He's trying to monopolize a sport that can't be monopolized because the promoters are too egalitarian in terms of how they deal.
Well, look, let's just be honest, Tony. These guys are under contract and have been developed by their respective promoters. How's he going to use them? And are they going to want to work with Dana White, who understand from precedents that have already been set with UFC? That's why Francis Ngannou left. That's why Conor McGregor left. That's why all of their big stars are interested in creating crossover events, because they actually want to make some real money. And look, it's like, you mean to tell me that existing promoters like Oscar De La Hoya, Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, after using all of their resources to develop attractions, they're just going to be fine with turning them over to Dana White, who doesn't give two shits about this business? Yeah. In my opinion, Dana White is merely just doing this for the money, and he's got nothing to lose because he's got UFC to fall back on, as well as slap fighting or whatever the hell that's called.
Yeah, Joe, and this is why I've been saying this. I think Dana is just a mouthpiece. I don't think he really is going to do the business side of it. I think that's going to be a guy like Ari Emanuel and what's his name?
Yeah, I know you're talking about Mr. WWF, Khan.
Yeah, Nick Khan. I think they're going to be the business side of it, and they're going to try to buy. They're going to try to get a top rank from Bob Heyman in my honest opinion. That's what
Bob
they're
Arum?
Bob Arum. Bob Arum.
Yeah, in my opinion, that would be the most logical move for Dana White because it has a built-in not only structure but and infrastructure, but it's got also the talent that's been cultivated over years of the resources of Top Rank. In my opinion, that would be the wisest move. But from what I'm being told and from what I'm hearing, Dana White wants to start from scratch. Best
Which
of
is
luck.
idiotic.
We're talking about a potential pro box. And I'll be honest, the gentleman who runs Pro Box, whose name eludes me right now.
Is it Richard Schaefer?
No, it's not Richard Schaefer. It's Jonas, Gary Jonas. He knows more about this business, and he's doing a great job with Pro Box. But you're right, Dana White with his UFC clout. He's got the name recognition, and he can sell this product to Netflix, and they'll buy it. In my opinion, Turki Al-Sheikh doesn't need, and this is my experience in the business, he doesn't need Dana White. All he has to do is forget about DAZN in the American market and sell this product. All of his Riyadh season events, sell it to Netflix. Because let's just be honest, guys, and I've said this for years now. The only salvation for boxing is to put it on a recognized mainstream platform.
That has
where you don't obscure the best product behind a pay-per-view paywall.
And this is honestly, and this is what I'm saying, to be honest. Look at the success WWE has had with Raw on Netflix. They've had
perfect example. Perfect example. So all you have to do, brother, Turki Al-Sheikh, you've already produced an amazing product. All you have to do is put it on a platform where people can see it. That's it. Because let's just be honest, guys. The last Crescendo rocked everything. It was straight fire. That was not only one of the best cards that we've seen in a while, but it delivered. It delivered. It was awesome. And no one saw it. And it's no coincidence that after he lost his ass, paying inflated purses to both Arthur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol, that he launched this TKO and announced this merger with Dana White. Because all of those assholes like Michael Montero and Steve Kim, who insisted to me, oh, well, Turki Al-Sheikh he doesn't care about losing money. Well, obviously he does. Or else he wouldn't need Dana White. Guys, you're in this business for two reasons.
To make money and
First
to make
one,
more money.
To make money, and two, to make more money. Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, and this is why I'm saying,
these assholes who thought, well, Turki Al-Sheikh doesn't care about the return on his investment. Yes, he does. And I told you guys this 2 years ago.
Yeah, no, I don't think Dana's going to be the one buying the promotion. I think it's going to be TKO and Turki.
I'm sorry, what?
You're saying the smart move is for Dana to buy? I think it's already set up. I think.
No. Look. The smart move is going to be to sell his product. Ditch DAZN. DAZN is the dead zone in America. It's doing okay in other markets, but it still has less than 500,000 subscribers in the American market. Like, I'll be honest. I remember bringing up a couple of years ago, right? because in the club business, in the club platform, most of our fans are mainstream fans who love these local fighters. And we do everything we can to build local attractions, right? And so they don't necessarily like watch boxing on the world stage, but they love boxing and they love these local attractions. And so I asked several people before Canelo was going to fight Dimitri Bivol. And I said, hey, you looking forward to the Canelo fight? And they're like, yeah, where's he going to fight? And I said, on DAZN. They said, what the hell is DAZN? Over like almost a dozen people responded that exact same way, which means no one, like, think about the hit that Jake Paul just had with Mike Tyson on Netflix. Did he ever get that kind of response on DAZN?
No.
That says it all. That says it all. Turki Al-Sheikh, you don't need Dana White. Sell your product to Netflix.
And this is where I'm going to be.
And it will give on that platform, which has over 186 million subscribers worldwide. It will
Joe,
give
this is what I'm saying.
the shot of the arm that it needs.
Yeah, and I've been predicting this too. I think eventually Oscar's going to break up with Eddie because he doesn't know the American market, and he might join up with TKO so they can go on Netflix.
He's going to not look. He's not doing look, Oscar De La Hoya. Everyone knows that a promoter is only as strong as his current attractions. And Turki Al-Sheikh has ascertained, because he's no dummy and he's no one's fool. And his organization that's supporting and organizing and paying for these events, Sella, right, from Saudi Arabia, very intelligent. And they've ascertained that Eddie doesn't have any pull or juice in the American market. And so Oscar, who is the primary lead promoter for this New York Times Square event?
Oscar.
Exactly. And why is that?
Because he knows the American market.
Ryan Garcia. He's got Ryan Garcia.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Eventually, Oscar is gonna break his partnership with DAZN and move to and try to partner up with a TKO and something who knows the American market. Even though it's wrestling, they know how to promote within the American market.
Well, I will say this about Golden Boy, and I love Oscar, and I have a lot of respect for him. And yeah, he's been through a lot on a personal level, and he's a goofball at times. But one thing I don't like about Oscar is that he seldom gives credit where credit is due. Like, you know how I often sing the praises of Don Warwick Chargan?
Yeah.
And I give him credit for all of my knowledge and experience in this business. Have you ever heard him mention Don Chargan once?
No.
Why?
Ego.
He didn't know a damn thing. Eric Gomez, he pulled him to the side and taught Eric Gomez everything he knows, not only about this business, but the fine art of matchmaking. Also, Roberto Diaz.
Is Eric Gomez? Eric
and Roberto often stated on various interviews, yeah, Don was like a dad to us. He taught us everything.
Is the Eric Gomez in chat the same Eric Gomez you're talking about? There's an Eric Gomez in the chat. Is that him?
No. This isn't the same Eric Gomez. But hey, Eric, welcome to the show, sir, and thank you for being here, my friend. Love you, man. Hold on. Martin, 9400, thank you for hanging with us, my brother. He said that's exactly why Turki had his temper tantrum, canceled the Crawford fight, Well, I don't know if he ever did that, but look, there's a reason why Crawford and Canelo are going to be in the main event of the first TKO Boxing League event, because they're both free agents and are not tied down to any, are obligated to any promoter. That's why. But he did sign Canelo to a 4-fight deal because he understood and ascertained after the Crawford debacle. I will agree with you here. After that money pit and losing over $15 million on the event, he ascertained the hard way that he needed to work. He needed to work with the biggest attractions in North America.
Canelo Alvarez and Jake Paul.
That's it. And anyone who thinks that Turki isn't interested in the return on his investment, why did he sign KSI? Why is he staging Ryan's comeback in New York City? Why, if he's not interested in his return? Ryan Garcia isn't a champion. He's never won a title. So why is he interested in featuring Ryan Garcia in New York and putting him as a headliner?
Because he knows Ryan can make him his return on investment right away.
Well, yep. And so Alberto, welcome, brother. My brother in Christ. Thank you for hanging with us, my friend. Love you on the show. And he says, Joe, do you think there's always going to be a place for the alphabet titles? In my opinion, I miss the days. And this is just from boxing history. Back when number 7 contender used to fight number 8 contender, and that used to actually mean something. But now everyone has grown accustomed to, well, if it's not for a title, then what does it mean? What's the point? It's inconsequential. That's not true. Look at Callum Smith versus Joshua Buatsi. That was an amazing fight at 175. And it truly meant something. All of these fights have a consequence. Now, if you doubt that, you ask a fighter, hey, did you view this fight as a must-win? And they'll correct you very quickly. Hey, you know what? That's a stupid question. Because every fight in boxing is a must-win. Every fight means something.
These fighters fight like it's their last day in the ring all the time.
And so the fact that these networks and these benefactors have put more importance on the titles than they should, that's not the sanctioning organization's fault. And
Joe, I think you and Joe, you and James Gogi specifically told me once that, like in one of your streams with James, that what made the sport special back in the 70s, 80s is they used to have regional titles.
Yes.
That were used.
The NABF used to actually mean something. The state titles, the state championships used to actually mean something. If you won the California State Heavyweight Championship, well, you were on your way to getting a title shot for the NBA or the WBA, which was the only title in existence back in the day.
So the WBC didn't come around to the late 80s?
No, earlier than that. It was actually the late 60s.
Oh, Mauricio was around?
Jose
was around during the prime of Ali and Foreman and stuff like that?
Why do you think why do you think Muhammad Ali, why do you think the WBC became as renowned as it is? Because Muhammad Ali was proud to wear that title.
That's what I was going to ask you next. Do you think,
guys, understand this? Understand this. And this is what Dana White doesn't understand. This is one of the reasons why I wholeheartedly believe, with my knowledge of the business, that he is doomed for failure because he doesn't know shit from Shinola about boxing. The fighters make the titles, not the other way around. And WBC, they know this. This is why they never had any intention of calling or forcing Canelo's hand in fighting David Benavidez. They never did. Because they understood, hey, you know what? Our belt is worth more with when it's around Canelo's waist.
And that's what I, and Joe, this,
why do you think, and this goes back to 160 pounds, when Jermall Charlo was knocking at the door and was his mandatory challenger, why do you think they deemed him franchise champion back then?
So he can get
could fight whomever he wanted.
Oh, the franchise was created to so Canelo could choose who he wanted to fight, basically.
Yep.
Is that how? Would you say that that's how the super title was created? Was that super title in? Is it the WBO or WBA that does the super?
It's a WBA.
They
have the super champion. And one of the reasons, and most people don't even know this, one of the reasons why they deemed and designated a super WBA was most of the time when you had that distinction, that you carried other titles as well.
From other,
and so they would, so being the super champion for the WBA, they give you an extended grace period to fight their mandatory challenger, which is, I think, deemed at 15 months, not just a year. So hold on. Boxing Source. James, thank you for hanging with us, my friend. And he says, so Loma got that luxury as well. Yes, he did. Because because Bob Arum wanted to make the in-house fight during COVID, Lomachenko versus Teofimo, and not a matchroom fighter in Devin Haney. That's why.
And Martin brings up a good point. In order to get the super designation, you have to have three successful title defense.
That may be in the bylaws, but truth be told, the reason why it was originally made, think about this, guys, was because of Roy Jones. Because he had all the belts at 175. He couldn't defend all of them in time. So they gave him that extended period, and they created the Super WBA for Roy Jones. Think about that. Do you remember how difficult it was at one time to get Roy Jones a mandatory challenger for Roy Jones Jr. when he was Superman at 175? In his prime.
Very difficult.
Even prospects didn't look forward to facing and earning a career high payday to get their asses whooped by Roy Jones, one of the greatest to have ever done it.
The only guy that had the courage was Tarver.
Well, that was after he had ballooned up with the benefit of PEDs to whoop the shit out of John Ruiz, the huggy man, John Ruiz. And then he melted back down to 175. After that point, it's like he wasn't the same. Talk about falling off of a cliff. His chin was dust. It wasn't just glass. it was dust after that. He got knocked the fuck out by everyone except Jeff Lacey and Felix Trinidad.
So it's almost, I'm going to use a funny comparison. It's almost like how they used to make fun of Floyd Patterson saying he had a sponsorship by the Corning Glass Company. Almost like,
oh, dude, don't you ever say anything about Floyd Patterson.
No.
Here, listen. You want to hear some history? The very first closed circuit events by the Teleprompter Corporation, right? And this was the very first big closed circuit event, was the rematch between Floyd Patterson and Ingemar Johansson. And I will say this, after getting the shit knocked out of him in the first fight, in which Floyd Patterson relinquished the title to Ingemar Johansson, he immediately wanted a rematch. And 7 months later, they fought in Yankee Stadium on the very first closed circuit event. And Ingemar Johansson was the heavy betting favorite. What did Floyd Patterson do? Whooped his ass in front of a captive American audience on closed circuit. So you cannot say anything bad about Floyd Patterson.
Where does that notion that he had a glass jaw come from?
Because he got his ass whooped in the first fight by Ingemar Johansson.
Okay. No, because
look. Here's the reason why I will always stick up for heavyweights. Because there's no shame. There is no shame in getting knocked out by a guy who weighs over 240 pounds. Yeah, I don't care how good your chin may be, or you may think it is. If a guy hits you flush on the chin who weighs over 240, 250 pounds, you're going to sleep. Just ask Martin Bacoli.
No. Ask who was the guy that Deontay Wilder knocked out in his prime? He's like a Jamaican or he's a Jamaican or like or a Bahamian guy. Like he had dreadlocks. I forgot his name. One of the first guys he knocked out to win a championship.
Wait, who are you talking about now?
The guy that Deontay Wilder knocked out for his first championship.
Oh, Bermain Stivern from Donkey.
Yeah, Bermain. Yeah, Stivern is a perfect example of that.
Well, let me tell you something about Bermain Stivern, right? Former football player, right? Turned boxing pro. When he fought Deontay Wilder, I covered that fight. And I was at the MGM Grand. And I knew, right? I knew that he had been up all night partying the night before the fight in his hotel room. Don't ask me how I know this, but I know this. I may or may not have been up there with him.
What? You're in that room?
I can neither
confirm or deny.
Confirm nor deny that statement.
You don't want to lose your press pass.
I don't care at this point, but I'm not going to say anything because I swore to secrecy. But I can tell you with great certainty that he was partying all night before the Deontay Wilder fight.
Both fights or the second fight that he got knocked out at?
No. The first fight, he went the distance. But I can tell you with great certainty that he didn't take that fight as seriously as he should have. Because Berman, boy, like him or not, he, in his prime, was an excellent counterpuncher. That's how he whooped Chris Areola's ass to get that opportunity, to get that belt, to win the WBC. But I knew after the night before the fight, the night of the weigh-in, I knew that he was going to lose. I knew it.
Jump Tube asked, did you lay down a huge bet on Wilder knocking him out?
No, because I was working with Golden Boy at the time. I knew that Deontay Wilder was not going to take any chances. He was going to box him from mid to long range the entire fight. And he won the fight with his left hand alone, not the right. He boxed him and won the fight with his jab alone, keeping the fight from mid to long range. And so anyone who thinks that Deontay Wilder doesn't know how to box, yeah, well, look at that first Berman-Stivern fight.
And this is when he was actually listening to his former trainer.
Who are you talking about?
Not the guy who he constantly got in a fight with that he ended up firing. His trainer.
You talking about Berman?
No, Deontay.
Oh, Mark Breland.
Yeah.
Mark Breland is the shit. That is one of the best guys you will ever meet in this business.
Is he underrated, do you think, Mark?
Yes. And to be honest, I'll tell you the story behind that. Originally, what's his name from the music business? What's his name? The Jewish guy.
Al
I
Heyman?
can't remember his name. Who's a manager? Shelly Finkel. He co-manages Deontay Wilder's career. And he's very dear friends with Ronnie Shields, our brother, on the show. Me and James, right? Our brother. And so Shelly Finkel calls up Ronnie Shields one day and says, hey, would you be interested in training Deontay Wilder? Because I think he's going to be the next great American heavyweight champion. And Ronnie says, well, sure, just bring him down to Houston. He goes, well, that's just the thing. He wants to stay in Tuscaloosa. He's not going to leave Alabama. And Ronnie goes, well, that's impossible then, because I have too many fighters in Houston. And at the time, he was at the Plex, right? But he said, look, let me help you out, because there's a guy who's a former champion and one of the great amateur standout in American USA boxing history. And that's my brother, Mark Breland. And he would be a great addition to Deontay Wilder's career. And that's who got him the job with Deontay Wilder. Ronnie Shields, my brother, who is interested who has the best interest of everyone in this business. Like here's the cool thing about Ronnie. He doesn't have favorites in this business. He loves everybody. Like he would take off his shirt if someone needed it, just to appease. He's a hard ass, but he learned from Emmanuel and his chief mentor from Main Events, the late great Georgie Benton. He learned from two of the greatest guys in this business, Emmanuel Stewart and Georgie Benton. So Ronnie, he would take the shirt off of his back if you needed it. And so he was happy to get Mark Breland that gig. And that's who's responsible for Mark Breland cultivating the skill set of Deontay Wilder.
Yeah, and I'm going to say this, like with Ronnie specifically, I think did Mark learn, like, did he learn directly under, was he working with Sugar too?
Who?
Was Mark Breland working with Sugar and Ronnie?
Mark Breland, everyone loved Mark because he's probably one of the sweetest guys, most mild-mannered that you will, like, it's crazy. and I freak out on this to this day. I there are several fighters that I know and I've known that are the sweetest guys that you will ever meet in life, not just in this business, but in life, that can flip the switch and turn into a fucking killer in the ring. A guy who's fighting this weekend, Nick Ball, is one of those guys. Like, it fascinates me. How can you be so mild-mannered and such a good guy? Like Arthur Beterbiev is one of them also. But you flip that switch and he steps in the ring and he turns into a fucking stone cold killer.
Yeah,
and he's got no ego. And he doesn't beat his chest like most fighters.
Yeah,
Mark
I have another guy that was like that too.
Mark Breland was one of those guys.
Yeah, I know it's an odd thing, but there was a Mexican fighter like that too in the 90s that he was very mild-mannered outside the ring, but when he got inside the ring, he was a killer. I think it was Eric Morales. He had a weird paradox
No. Eric Morales, look, I interviewed him so many times that I understood that his ego and his vanity, he was never as humble as a guy like Mark Breland.
Oh no, not Eric. It's either Marquez or Morales. My God.
Look, I can tell you with great certainty also, because Marquez was coming up at the same time that I just got in the business. And I interviewed Juan Manuel Marquez several times too. And I can tell you with great certainty that Marquez, because of his skill set, remember when he first started in this business, he was a boxer puncher who liked to, in which guys like James Gogi called him a cutie pie. That was a guy who never wanted to mix it up and liked to keep everything from mid to long range, liked to box, didn't want to get hit. Well, he made this metamorphosis because he understood, because of guys like Eric Morales and guys like Marco Antonio Barrera and guys like Julio Cesar Chavez. He's like, fuck, no one likes me. I'm going to have to get in the pocket and mix it up. And so Top Rank was like, dude, you're not a ticket seller. His promoter at the time, Top Rank, they were like, you're not a ticket seller. You're going to have to fight like a real Mexican in order to sell tickets and in order to get these big opportunities. And
so Marquez was a Mexican fighting like an American fighter.
Yep. And so guess what? He understood and he said, you know what? No fighter is bigger than the sport. I'm going to adapt and I'm going to overcome. And guess what? It made Juan Manuel Marquez the legend he is today, because he said, you know what? I'm going to add that new wrinkle to my game, and I'm going to show my balls in the ring, because I know I'm better than the reception that I'm getting. And so he took on that perception, that mindset, to get in the pocket and trade. And man, he made for some legendary fights.
Was there a Hispanic fighter then you can remember that matches Mark Breland where he was a mild-mannered guy outside the ring, but he was
Finito Lopez.
Ricardo?
Yep, Ricardo Finito Lopez. He was a gentleman outside the ring, and he was a gentleman in the ring, and he was an artist in the ring. Go watch his fights, guys. His footwork is legendary for back then. Dude, he was an artist. He was a painter.
No, what I mean by that, mild, I mean that he was a killer, where his mild-mannered personality contradicted his killer, like that killer knockout.
Look, once again, I marvel at that because I don't see it often. Mark Breland was one of those guys who was a gentleman and a soft-spoken, he was a gentle giant, so to speak. where he was as nice as can be, but you flip that switch and put him in the ring, he was a killer with a fucking right hand that would like a sledgehammer. But it's so hard. It's so hard to balance that. That's why his career didn't pan out the way everyone thought it was going to be. Like, very few guys can flip that switch and become the killer and maintain that for an entire career.
Yeah,
When
no.
they're mild-mannered and they're as gentlemanly as can be. Why do you think Ronnie Shields retired from the sport?
He was too
before
polite.
He should have. Because he's a gentleman and he's a great guy.
I'm gonna use a comparison. You watch a lot of old school wrestling.
Yep.
I'm gonna use a comparison to Mark Breland in wrestling. Buddy Wayne, if you know who that is.
Buddy Wayne. Look, wrestling is a different animal entirely.
I'm talking about the personality. Buddy was like, a lot of people said Buddy was like that too, where he was a gentleman outside the ring. He was very polite, soft-spoken. But when he got into the ring, he would tie you in knots and stuff like that. This was Ric Flair saying this. Rick hated wrestling Buddy coming up.
Well, look. Buddy was a different animal than Ric Flair, though. The Buddy was the Bret Hart back in the day. He was the excellence of execution. And Ric Flair, he was all just
showmanship.
He was machismo, right? He was all persona. He was the Flair, right? And so, like, he didn't like fighting like technically brilliant wrestlers because he couldn't match that.
Wow!
And look, and Ric Flair, that guy, talk about a charmed life. This is a guy that should be dead several times over.
He survived a plane accident, I remember, didn't he?
Yep, and that was when he was young.
Wow.
And dude, he survived a lot more than that.
Yeah,
go watch his what is the ESPN documentary?
30 for 30. 30 for 30.
Yes, thank you, Tony. Go watch that, guys.
Oh, I've seen the Nature Boy 30 for 30.
Yep.
It was good.
Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm surprised he survived. He lasted this long, honestly. No, but do you agree with me that Buddy Wayne would be a perfect example, like a perfect congruent comparison to Mark Breland in boxing?
Similar, yes. And I'll tell you why. Because most of the time, and this is why I'm so fascinated, and once again, he's fighting this weekend. That's Nick Ball, right? For Frank Warren in Queensberry. Because he's such a good, soft-spoken, affable guy. But when he steps in the ring, he wants your ass. He wants to whoop your ass and make an example out of you. And it's like, wait a minute. Most of the time, just to step foot in the ring, you need to have that confidence, that almost brimming with confidence, that bravado, that not only lets you succeed in the ring, but you've got to wear that 24/7. Because let's just face it, boxing is a mental sport. And so I'm always fascinated with guys who are very soft-spoken, kind, don't have an ill word to say about anybody, and who can whoop that ass in the ring.
Actually, I would say maybe Virgil's like that too. Virgil's like that too. He's very soft-spoken. Virgil, he doesn't like. He doesn't talk.
No. Let's get this straight. I know Virgil and his dad. I spent a lot of time with them. Virgil is a good kid, but he's got that mean streak. But
you don't hear him talking trash a lot. That's what I'm saying. Virgil's not the type of guy.
Well, give him the opportunity. He will. That's what I'm saying. These are very rare breeds indeed. And I will say this. You brought up Berman Stivern earlier.
Yeah.
That's a guy who he's a gentle giant. He loved everybody. And he was so soft-spoken. I can tell you with great certainty, the worst interviews I've ever had on the air, right? The worst interviews I've ever had was Paul Williams, who had the personality of a stick, but I love Paul. Great kid, great guy. It's a tragedy what happened to him because he loved riding motorcycles. And Berman Stivern. It was like pulling teeth trying to get more than a one-word response from him.
I heard Charles Martin was like that. The guy who, not Charles Martin, who is it Charles Martin that beat one of the Klitschko brothers? Was like that too?
No, Charles Martin never beat one of the Klitschko brothers. Are you talking about Layman Brewster?
Yeah, was Brewster like that, or was he a big?
No. I will say this: if you're talking about someone who can flip the switch, that's another guy. Because Layman, oh man, his heart is as big as Texas. Layman is such a genuinely great guy. And he's such a good, God-fearing guy. But when he steps in the ring, yeah, he wanted to whoop your ass. But you know what? I think that kind of got in the way. Because, in retrospect, when I think about it, Layman, he could have accomplished so much more. He was so talented.
He never promoted himself.
He was so genuinely gifted. I think if he had the Vitaly Klitschko mean streak, that he would have fared better in his career. But he was such a kind-hearted man. And he still is, guys. Layman Brewster from Indiana, right, is one of the best guys that you will ever meet in this business ever.
How about Shannon Briggs?
Shannon Briggs is an asshole. That's a guy who would never be mistaken for being a kind soul. He is the exact opposite of Layman Brewster. Layman, man, he is such a good, God-fearing guy. I will tell you this. True story. When I first started working with Layman Brewster, he goes, Joseph, man, now that you've got me, man, as a friend, I'm in your corner for life. Because that's the way we roll, man. We are Christians. We are both God-fearing men, and you've got me as a friend for life. That's what a great guy Layman Brewster is.
They say the same thing about Usyk. Usyk doesn't like. Usyk is like he flips the switch too. Usyk is like Baturviev, and what's his name? The other guy, Bevel.
Well, look, we've been on this show now. We've been on this, and thank you, Tony, for hanging with me, man. I always love chopping it up with you, man.
Yeah,
you're my brother and you're my nephew, and I love you, man. And but let's end this on this. This is interesting. The Martin 9400. Thank you for hanging with us too, man. I appreciate it, brother. And it's good to see you in the chat. He says it's funny how good Vitaly Klitschko was, but everyone only remembers his brother Vladimir. That's interesting. That's interesting because Vitaly, in my opinion, and I worked with Emmanuel while he was working with Vladimir, and Vladimir was the better ambassador for the sport. He was the nice guy. And you often saw that in the ring, and that was the difference between Vladimir and Vitaly.
Vitaly was an asshole?
No, Vitaly was all business, though. And he was such a smart guy. And I met both of them, and I spent time with both of them. And Vitaly was so smart but he was all business. That's why he went into politics, right? He had a big heart, but you couldn't get anything past him, and he wouldn't agree with something that he didn't personally agree with. He wouldn't even go along with it. He would call you out on it, in fact. He had that mean streak in him. Vladimir, though, he would be the diplomat. He would be the ambassador. He was the kind-hearted guy who wore his heart on his sleeve, and it showed in the ring. Vladimir often resembled a nervous and trepidatious fighter. Looked like he was afraid to get hit. Vitaly, on the other hand, wanted to whoop your ass and make an example out of you. Vitaly, to be honest, the what derailed him, and I know this with great certainty.
Injuries.
Don't ask me how I know this, but I know this. Vitaly, what derailed his career was all the abuse of steroids. That's what kept him out of the 96 Olympics.
Oh, steroids killed his career?
He tested positive. And because of all the steroid abuse, everything started to fall apart. Notice that late in his career, he was plagued with injury. A torn rotator cuff, a torn meniscus, a torn ACL. It ruined his career. Not because he didn't have the willingness to fight, but because he couldn't physically do it any longer.
Dominic says it's not funny. That's why. But
he wasn't interested in just winning. He wanted to prove that he was the dominant guy. He wanted to beat your ass into submission. Look at the Chris Arreola fight. Look at the Danny Williams fight. Now think about this logically, guys. Vitaly Klitschko, and I will argue to this day, he was one of the most dominant heavyweights of any era because he figured out a way, he was so smart, to not only win, but dominate the fight. Because he was so big and so heavy-handed that he realized all he had to do was just touch you from mid to long range. He didn't have to load up on any one punch like Vladimir. Vladimir was the steel hammer, the stronger puncher. But Vitaly, Dr. Eisenfaust, Dr. Iron Fist, all he had to do was touch you and just make it a numbers game. And he told me, yeah, that's what I do. I make it a numbers game. And as long as I touch you more than you touch me, I'm going to win. And that's what I do. My system, my way of fighting, he explained to me, doesn't look aesthetically pleasing or effective, but it's ultra effective. And I've outsmarted the division. And think about this, guys. Go back and look at his fights. In the only two fights that he lost against Chris Bird and Lennox Lewis, he was winning both at the time of the stoppage. He was winning both on all three judges' scorecards. That's how dominant Vitaly Klitschko was.
Martin brings up further down, he says, remember, Vitaly sat out for 4 years, came back and beat Samuel Peter.
Yep. That's how good Vitaly was. And he beat Sam Peter into submission.
Does his power get underrated compared to his brother?
No. He never tried to have one punch knockout power. That's what people don't understand. Like, his knockout ratio was better than everyone in boxing. Right? But he didn't fight for the knockout. He didn't fight for the knockout. He said, you know what? I just have to touch you. And you're going to feel it. And it's going to be an accumulated effort. A numbers game over round after round after round. and I just have to rinse and repeat, use my footwork as the foundation of my defense, stay away from you, and I can touch you without loading up on one punch. And because I'm going to throw more punches than you, you're going to feel it and you're going to ultimately submit because I'm bigger, stronger, and ultimately smarter than you are. And that's what Vitaly Klitschko did. And no one, like, it became almost embarrassing. Go back and watch Vitaly Klitschko's fights. It was every fight was a one-sided mismatch, including his comeback against Sam Peter. It wasn't even competitive. He was that good. And, ultimately, I asked Emmanuel Stewart, I'm like, why didn't Lennox Lewis want to come back and have a rematch? That would have been a massive fight. Because most people don't realize that Vitaly Klitschko versus Lennox Lewis, Vitaly was actually scheduled to be on the undercard. And because Kirk Johnson, the mandatory challenger, got sick 2 weeks before the fight, got injured, Vitaly Klitschko saved the event, stepped in at the Staples Center in LA, and gave Lennox Lewis everything it could handle. That was his last fight. And I asked Emmanuel Stewart, well, why didn't Lennox Lewis ever grant Vitaly a rematch? He stated that because of my mom. My mom was there ringside. And, she's such a sweet lady. God rest her soul. She was such a sweet lady. And she told Lennox, don't fight that guy again. Because after you beat him and stopped him with that horrid gash over his eye, he still wanted to fight you. You don't need that guy at this stage of your career. Retire. Don't fight him again. Because that guy is scary.
I think the closest fighter to...
And Lennox Lewis said, you know what? My mom said she didn't want me fighting him, so you know what? I've never disobeyed my mother. And so I obeyed my mother. That's a true story, guys. That's a true story.
Joe, I have maybe the closest fighter I think maybe to Vitaly maybe is Beterbiev.
You know what? That is a very good example because Beterbiev is such a devout, spiritual, religious guy. And he doesn't even like watching boxing. He's really good at it. But he's such a devout, religious guy that, yeah, he's very soft-spoken. And
in terms of the fighting style, I'm saying.
Very disciplined. In my opinion, pound for pound, Beterbiev is a harder puncher. He's a harder puncher.
Or my mistake, Alexander Usyk, maybe.
Alexander Usyk? No, not even close. Not even close. Arthur Beterbiev is the better comparison.
In terms of fighting style?
Yeah. Vitaly was so smart. Go back and watch his fights, guys. It's fascinating. Where he would throw 1-2 and then would keep his hands extended and push you to the side while stepping around you so you couldn't counter effectively. It was almost unfair. That's why I'm saying, guys, go back and look at his fights. He was a marvel.
And I think that's why they didn't fight each other. I think
seriously, you can count on one hand how many rounds he lost in his career. It almost seemed unfair.
Yeah, and I've always and this is my theory too, besides them promising their mother that they wouldn't fight each other, I think Vladimir even knew his brother was better than him. So
look, Vladimir was the more athletically gifted. He was the better ambassador. He was the more liked more beloved fighter of the two. But Vitali was smart. He was busy, bigger, just smarter. Like
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm
was
saying.
like, once again, Vitali was so brilliant that he figured out a way. Go watch his fight with Shannon Briggs. He puts him in checkmate as early as round 1. Go watch Danny Williams. Go watch all of his fights. Dude, he was so good.
No, that's what I'm saying, Joe. I think that's what, in a sense, I think there's where, besides them promising their mother they would never fight each other, I think Vladimir in his head knew his brother would have beat him.
Yeah, and Vitali knew that too. Like, why do you think after getting his ass whooped by Corey Sanders, Vladimir Klitschko, Vitali was like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm going to whoop your ass. And Vitali in the Staples Center fighting Corey Sanders for the WBC title, right? The one that Lennox Lewis vacated. He fought Corey Sanders and whooped his ass and was relentless. Like, he beat him to a pulp to the point where it retired Corey Sanders.
Wasn't that the fight that Corey like quit on the bench?
No. My friend John Shorley is a referee in Texas now. He actually stepped in and called a halt to the bout because it was brutal. Go back and watch that fight. And Corey Sanders, one of the most underrated fighters in the 90s, right? He was avoided because he was southpaw, quick hands. And Vladimir Klitschko found out the hard way why he was avoided. Hold on. Dominic, welcome to the show, sir. Good to see you, man. He says, what a joke of a heavyweight era, Corey Sanders. Brother, then I question if you know what you're actually looking at. Because Corey Sanders, the sniper, God rest his soul, brother, he would whoop any heavyweight in this era. Southpaw, great counterpuncher, quick, heavy-handed. He would beat the fuck out of anyone you could mention from this era.
Usyk?
Honestly, Corey Sanders, yes, he would knock out Usyk.
I was going to say a prime Deontay Wilder.
Jose Barrera knows what time it is. Sanders would beat everyone today, without a doubt. That's why he was avoided back in the 90s. Ask Lennox Lewis. Ask him if he ever wanted to face Corey Sanders. And he will admit, and I've talked to him about this. He says, I was really grateful and I was really happy that Hasim Rahman upset him to get that fight in South Africa. Now, he ultimately got knocked out by Hasim Rahman, but he understood that Hasim Rahman wasn't nearly as good as Corey Sanders.
What? See, and this is where I don't. Why do you think the fans say that era of boxing for the heavyweight division specifically was like horrendous?
Well, look, because ultimately, like Dominic, they don't know what the fuck they're looking at. They like to think that they do. But do they really? Because if they did, they wouldn't be saying this, espousing this nonsense. Vitali Klitschko? Vladimir? Corey Sanders? Lennox Lewis? Let's talk about all the badasses from that era. The early 2000s. Do you really think that all four of those guys couldn't whip the shit out of everyone in this era, including Usyk, including Anthony Joshua, including Daniel Dubois, including Tyson Fury? All four of them would have smoked their ass like a cheap cigar.
Even Shannon Briggs.
Okay, So this tells me right here, right fucking here, that Dominic doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Take a look at Sanders' record. Okay, this is where, and I'm going to quote Emmanuel Stewart, Dominic. Emmanuel Stewart always said, well, you know what? Records, resumes, and trinkets are for fight fans, network executives, and writers who don't know what they're looking at in the ring. And that is the truth. That is the truth. So, Dominic, it's become very apparent on this episode that you don't know anything. You don't know what you're looking at in the ring yet. And for someone who claims to be in this business, that's quite shocking.
And Martin makes a good point. A lot of people think to be a great fighter has to be American. You have to be American.
Well, look, I will say this. And the reason why people say that, because it's been regurgitated from great trainers who actually know what they're looking at. So if you ask people why they say that, they can't tell you, but I can tell you, right? If you look at European style, they fight in the amateur style, where they fight from mid to long range exclusively. They can't fight in the pocket. They can't use the shoulder roll, right? So one of the benefits of using the shoulder roll, if you have the intelligence and you have the influence, or you have the intelligence and you have the athletic ability, you can stand in the pocket, eliminate the targets of your opponent by using the shoulder roll, devised by the genius Georgie Benton, right? Ronnie Shields, a great mentor. If you use the shoulder roll correctly, you can eliminate all of their targets while sitting in the pocket like James Toney and counter their ass. Georgie Benton came up with that. He was the architect of the original Philly shell. That was Ronnie Shields' mentor. That's why I know for a fact that Ronnie Shields is the real deal. But he's not like Emmanuel and like Georgie, where he doesn't have the mentality of being a hard ass. By saying, he's just not cut from that cloth.
Jose
Ronnie
brings up
is
a good point, too.
He's a more affable guy, though.
Jose brings up a good point about David Tua. David couldn't get championship fights.
Look, I will say this about David Tua. In his prime, the guy who knocked out John Ruiz, the guy that went toe-to-toe with Ike Ibeabuchi, that guy would have whooped everyone's ass in this era, including Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Joseph Parker, Daniel Dubois, just name them. David Tua would be easily a champion in this era. Unfortunately,
Deontay Wilder.
Unfortunately, the era that Dominic is currently shitting on, David Tua was a B-level fighter in that era. That's how good the 90s were, guys.
The 90s and early 2000s would.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Tony.
The 90s and early 2000s was a great era for it. Just they didn't really have a ton of superstars. That's what the American fan base wants. They want more superstars in the heavyweight division. They don't care about the depth. They rather have it be top heavy. Do you agree?
Yeah, man. Look, in my opinion, there's only one era that comes close to the 70s in terms of heavyweight glory, and that's the 90s. Even the B and C level fighters were in all out, just amazing fights. That like let's just take someone like the Big O, Oleg Moskayev. That guy was all action. It was so much fun to watch him fight.
I never heard of him before.
Oleg Moskayev?
Nope. This is the first time I've ever heard of Oleg before. Until you said him, I'm like, wow.
Hold on. Dominic, just stop it, dude. Stop it. Because they went pro after the 96 Olympics. So shut up.
They started their career in the late 90s.
Dude, Dominic, you're exposing yourself. Just stop it. Honestly, Dominic, the fighters in the late 90s, early 2000s would school all of these entitled bitches in the heavyweight division today. So just stop it, man. Stop it, dude.
Yeah, no. And Joe, do you agree with me that Americans fans rather have a top-heavy superstar laden division instead of having a deep heavyweight division? Like this is the line of thinking Dominic has is a perfect example. He rather have more superstars instead of having a deep division with great B and C level fighters.
Honestly, I think the diehard boxing fans would share that sentiment. In my opinion, mainstream and casual fans want to just see throwdowns. They want to see a drag-out fight. That's it. They want to see a Pier 6 brawl. They want Gaddy Ward. They want Corrales Castillo. That's what they want. They want Layman Brewster versus Sergey Liakovich. Hey, Dominic, do you remember that amazing time capsule heavyweight fight? I think it was 2006, 2005. It was Layman Brewster versus Sergey Liakovich. The White Wolf versus the Relentless One. Do you remember that fight, dude? Oh, hold on. This says it all. Dominic says this. Joe, I watch all your takes. Your narrative about the Klitschko era is retarded. Okay,
that's just...
Hold on. That's based on what, Dominic? Because boxing was a much healthier sport in America when the Klitschkos had the heavyweight belts around their waist. So I'm sorry, dude. Anytime you want to get schooled in boxing, either what goes on in the ring or what goes on outside the ring, let me know, man. I'll be there.
Hey, right? Hawker, what up?
Look, Dominic, if you want to learn something about boxing, about the business or in the squared circle, let me know, man, because I'll be more than happy to teach you. Because right now, your slip is showing. You sound like a bitch. You sound like... And Tony, can you complete my sentence there, man? He sounds like a damn
I'm too polite. I don't want to finish that sentence.
He sounds like a damn fraud. And thank you, Tony, for being the gentleman. I love you, man. Hold on. Dominic, my son, you need some warm milk, a burp, and a nap. Is that really the best you could come up with? Because right now I'm schooling your ass on the internet, live, and you can't deal with it. That's the reality. And I tell you what, come out to our show, guys. South Park Boxing, AAA Promotions. It's going to be on May 10th at the SA Rodeo Event Center. May 10th, live on KSAT 12.
I don't know what it is. I don't trust the box rec sometimes because they I don't know what it is with box rec.
Here's why Emmanuel Stewart stated what he stated. Because resumes and records are contingent upon opportunities received. In other words, it's largely contingent upon what promoter you're aligned with, as well as you being an avoided fighter, as well as a big ticket seller.
Is that why you say Is that why you say Corey Sanders was avoided?
That's right, because he was never a big ticket seller. And he wasn't aligned with a big time promoter at that time. So everyone could avoid him and they could get away with it. Guys, understand this on this show because we know the business, unlike Dominic. There are no such things as boogeymen in boxing, but non-ticket sellers. Think about this. If Corey Sanders were a big ticket seller and were a big attraction, everyone would be standing in line to fight him, no matter how good he was. Why? Because this is what fighters do. Like if anyone buys into the bullshit that, oh, this guy's ducking this guy. Dude, if you ask any one of these fighters, they're like, fuck no, I'll whoop that guy's ass. And they genuinely believe that. On any given day, a real prize fighter with a real mentality believes he can whoop anyone's ass on any given day. Even the club level fighters, guys. And I know this. And Dominic, you should know this, you dumbass. That it takes that level of confidence just to step foot in the ring. Dude, you like I said, your slip is showing. Like a bitch.
Honestly, and this is who was the guy that
Hold on. This determines everything. Here, listen to this. Hey, pull up a poll. You know what? No, I don't have to, because a poll with mainstream and idiot fans like yourself don't know what they're looking at in the ring. That's why Emmanuel said what he did. Now, once again, one of the reasons why I have this podcast is to educate fans. And Anthony, tell me right now, I've tried to be as diplomatic as I possibly could on this episode. Can you say that you've learned something on this on this episode?
Yes, I've learned. Yeah, I've learned about the sport. I've said this multiple times. If it wasn't for you, James, Ronnie, Rick, and even Thomas, I wouldn't know half of the stuff I know about the business of the sport, not just what I'm looking at in the ring.
Thank you, Tony, for saying that. And that's why we're here. Because once again, our theory in developing this channel is if fans know more about the business, they'll complain less. But once again, Dominic, you're new to this channel. And you're new to boxing, obviously. So there it is, man. So on that note, well, we're almost 3 hours in. Anthony, it's almost approaching midnight where I'm at. Now I know you're almost approaching 1.
Yeah, it's 12:47 right now.
Yeah, so give your parting shots, my friend. And brother, it's been a pleasure to share the air with you, Tony. Thank you. And it always is, my friend.
I have no parting shots. I just want to I actually my parting shot, I'm still sticking to my guns. This fight, I understand money is why this fight is happening, but I'm still saying that it's a mistake for Crawford to jump up that high. Because let's not forget, Crawford started at 140.
135.
135. So, and Canelo's like at the smallest, Canelo was at 147, right?
He started his career at 140, but that was when he was a teenager.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying. This is why I've been saying it's a mistake for Crawford because Canelo's naturally a bigger guy. I understand Crawford has better skills and stuff like that, but Canelo's a naturally way bigger guy, and that scares me with Crawford being so small.
Well, look, I will say this. Crawford, in his mind, he thinks, and this is once again proves my point, supports my point, I shouldn't say prove, but it supports my point in saying that these prize fighters think they can beat anyone's ass on any given day. Crawford is a competitor.
Oh my God, I'm laughing because of the idiotic statement Dominic just made.
Yeah, dude. Honestly, you can't even take him seriously. And in my opinion, he's just saying this just to get a rise out of us. And I don't care anymore. I'll see you at the next event, hopefully, Dominic.
Yeah, no, and
look,
do you agree with me? Do you feel I'm not giving
What?
Do you think I'm not giving Crawford enough respect by doing this, or do you think I'm being realistic?
I think you're doing both. To be honest, Crawford is a winner. Like, as much as I don't like him outside of the ring, inside the ring, it's undeniable. The respect that he deserves. Crawford, a lot like Bernard Hopkins, Floyd Mayweather, Andre Ward, those guys are winners. He's got the mindset of a competitor and a winner.
Roy Jones.
He knows, like Roy Jones also, he's a winner inside and outside the ring. And so you can't count him out of any matchup. You can't. But you're correct in saying that Canelo has the clear advantage here.
Yeah, and I'm not saying, and this is where I don't think fans understand. Canelo, in general, even when he was younger, you could tell that he was way big, like weight-wise, he was way bigger than half of the kids he was fighting at 140 when he was a teenager and stuff like that.
Yeah, honestly, guys, look, guys, and I'll point this out. Dominic, good night to you, my friend. But seriously, if you ever want to learn something about boxing, hey, come out to one of the events. I can teach you, right? Not only what goes on inside the ring, but outside the ring. I have that experience, right? And I will show you, because one of my fighters that I am currently training, like, I'm going to be doing commentary, but I'm currently training right now a fighter who's going to make his pro debut on the AAA Promotions event on May 10th on KSAT 12. Yeah, there you go.
Have a good night, Joe. I have to jump off.
God bless you, Tony, and thank you. It's a real pleasure, my friend. Guys, that was dude, I love nights like this. I could just go on and on and on for 3 hours straight. And Martin 9400, thank you for being a big part of it. Thank you, my friend. And honestly, I love nights like this where I can share stories and experience. And once again, this is why I do it. I love this business, and I love this sport, and I love all of the fighters that I work with, and I love and I feel so privileged and honored to have worked with some of the greats. And we developed this channel to share all of this with all of you guys, and I love doing it. And to my extended family, the chat, I love you guys. And so on that note, on behalf of Tony Manzana, and yeah, I love doing this, guys. And so we are here for you. And so on that note, I bid you all a wonderful Thursday evening. Have a great evening, everybody.
Vashon Holdings proudly presents War Week Radio Chats with ring announcer Joseph Herring.